Second chance after cheating. My wife and I haven't gotten along for a while. I have to take half the blame, but only half. And to be honest, I think 10% would be a more accurate figure. My contribution to the problem was my inability to believe that Nan hadn't cheated on me. She swore it didn't happen, and I just didn't believe her. We were at her company's Christmas party, and there was a lot of drinking going on. Nan gets a little loose when she gets a little alcohol in her, and sometimes it's fun to watch her when she becomes the soul of the party. I have 2 left feet, and I don't like to dance, but Nan would spend her whole life on the dance floor if she could, and that night was no exception. She danced with everyone who asked her. She was kissed by almost every man she danced with, if he caught her under the mistletoe. It was her party, and she was enjoying herself, so I just sat back and watched. I didn't pay much attention at the time, but looking back, it seems to me that for every dance she danced with someone else, she had 2 dances with her boss, Brian. I noticed, but didn't think much of it at the time, that 3 times when she danced with Brian, he took her, or she him, under the mistletoe. I was taking pictures, and about 3 hours after the party started, I ran out of film. I had 2 more films in my coat pocket, so I got up and went to the dressing room to get them. My coat was hanging on the back row, and I was going through my pockets looking for the film when I heard 2 women talking. Can you believe it? And right in front of her husband. He must be blind. Maybe he's too busy taking pictures to see what he and Brian are doing. Everyone can see it. Of course, everyone here knows what goes on in Brian's office during the lunch hour. They left, and I found the tape and went back to our table. Nan was sitting there and asked me where I had gone. I told her I had gone to buy more tape. I like to gossip as much as anyone, and I was just about to ask her who Brian was having an affair with when one of her co-workers came up to her and asked her to dance. I made a mental note to pry it out of her on the way home. Another hour passed. I didn't pay much attention to Nan, as she was always on the dance floor, and I lost sight of her. I went to take a piss and was just coming out of the bathroom when I saw Nan leave the room further down the hall and hurry back to the dance floor. I wasn't sure, but I thought I saw her buttoning her blouse as she came out. I stood and watched her walk down the hallway back to the gym and wondered if I had really seen what I thought I saw. I don't know why I did it, probably out of curiosity, but I walked over to the room Nan had come out of, opened the door, and looked in. There was a man standing there with his back to me, his right hand moving, and I heard the sound of a zipper being zipped up. He turned around, and I saw it was Brian. I was looking for Nan. Someone told me they saw her come in here. They must have been mistaken. She wasn't here. I can see that. I apologize for intruding on you. As I spoke, a quick glance showed me that his zipper was unzipped. I turned and headed back to our table. Nan came out of that room, and he said she wasn't there. She was buttoning her blouse, and he was zipping up his zipper, and I got a bad feeling. 5 minutes later, Brian came back into the room, and as soon as I saw him sit down, I got up and went back to the room where I had seen him, went inside, and looked around. It was obviously a meeting room. There was a long rectangular table with 8 chairs around it, a trash can in the corner, and nothing else. I looked at the table where Brian was standing and saw that 2 of the chairs in that spot had been pushed apart to create an open space, and there were several wet spots on the table in front of that spot, pale, almost milky white wet spots. I walked over to that spot, looked down, and mentally saw it. Nan lying on her back and Brian making love to her. From where I was standing, I could see what was in the garbage can, and I noticed something pink, and when I looked closer, I saw it was a white handkerchief with pink NCD initials on it. It was one of the 6 handkerchiefs I had given Nan for her birthday. I picked it up, and it was wet. I stood there while my brain absorbed all the information, collated it, and looked at it from different angles. The women I overheard while I was in the locker room. All of her dancing with Brian and kissing under the mistletoe. Nan was buttoning her blouse as she left the room. Brian was zipping it up when I entered the room, and Brian denied Nan was there. I came to the conclusion that my wife was cheating on me with her boss. No conclusive proof, but the circumstantial evidence, at least to me, was irrefutable. I returned to the party and took my seat. I hadn't been gone more than 5 minutes, and when I left, Nan was on the dance floor with Todd, and she was still there with him. The music died down as the band finished their last track, and Todd escorted Nan back to her table. I looked at her carefully to see if I saw any signs of what she was up to, but I saw nothing. 20 minutes later, Nan and I put on our coats and headed home. As soon as I pulled out of the parking lot, I said, "You're hiding something from me, honey." "What do you mean?" You know I'm like an old woman when it comes to gossip. And that's when I told her what I overheard in the locker room. "Why didn't you ever tell me about it?" She turned away from me, and it was too dark in the car to make out the look on her face when she said, "I haven't heard anything like that." I changed the subject. "You certainly looked sexy on the dance floor tonight, and I bet I'm not the only one who thought so. I bet you had more than one man looking at you tonight." "Not tonight, Rob. I'm tired, and all I want to do is go home and go to bed." "That's not fair." "What are you trying to say?" "All day I've been trying to make love to you, and you kept telling me to wait until we got home tonight. I've been wandering around all day waiting for the party to end. I'm sorry, honey. I'll make it up to you tomorrow." "Are you sure there's no other reason you don't want to make love to me tonight?" "What does that mean?" "Think about it, honey. Just think about it." "No, Rob. I want to know where you're going with this." "No, you don't understand, Nan. You don't want to know where I'm going with this. You really don't want to know. We'll go home, I'll get some sleep, and see if my mood changes tomorrow." "No, Rob. Not tomorrow, now. I want to know right now." "Okay. You want it now, and you got it. I think you don't want to make love tonight because you don't dare let me near you. You don't want me to know that I won't be the first one to take advantage of you tonight." "What the hell are you accusing me of?" "I'm accusing you of cheating on me, Nan. I accuse you of making love to Brian at the party tonight. And I accuse you of being the woman the ladies were talking about when I was in the locker room getting my tape." "How dare you? You're out of your mind." "Am I?" "Well, let me tell you briefly, Nan. I told her everything I'd seen and what I'd discovered when I got back to the briefing room." "It's all here, Nan. Your refusal to give up on love tonight is the final nail in the coffin. You don't dare let me know for sure that I'm going to get sloppy seconds." "This is ridiculous, Rob. I don't see how you can believe I'd do that." "All right, Nan. Let's hear your explanation." "First of all, I told you I never heard anything about what was going on in Brian's office. Yes, I danced with him a lot tonight, but since you can't or won't dance with me, I dance with anyone who asks. Brian has asked me more often than anyone else. What does that prove? Kissing under the mistletoe is nothing new. It happens every year, and you've never complained about it before. We gathered in this room because Brian wanted to inform me privately that I would be appointed head of the accounting department as of the beginning of the year. My handkerchief was in the trash because I spilled my drink on the table and wiped it up with my handkerchief, and then I didn't feel like putting the wet handkerchief in my purse, so I threw it away. As for the way I buttoned my blouse, I think you imagined it. I have no idea what Brian was doing with his zipper. Why did he say you weren't in the room? Probably because he thought that if you knew I was there with him, you'd think about the ridiculous thoughts that are going through your head right now. I've said everything I was going to say about it. Believe it or not, I don't care." We walked the rest of the way home in silence. Once at the house, Nan went into our bedroom, grabbed a pillow, and headed for the guest bedroom. I undressed, got into bed, and lay staring at the ceiling until I fell asleep. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and reading the morning paper when Nan walked into the room. She poured herself a cup of coffee and walked into the living room. I finished reading the paper, rinsed the coffee cup, and went to the garage to change the oil in the car. Once that was done, I went back into the house and got ready to watch the soccer game. The game had just started when Nan came into the room and sat down at the table. "Did the night's sleep get all that nonsense out of your head?" I looked at her. "No. In fact, now I'm even more sure I was right. 3 things, Nan. I caught you in a lie. I replayed in my head what I saw, and now I'm sure I really saw what I thought I saw. And finally, your own actions last night after I confronted you face to face." You're impossible, Rob. What lie did you catch me in? What were my actions that convinced you that you were so sure of what you saw? The lie was about the handkerchief. Actually, it was two lies. The first was when you said you used it to wipe up a spilled drink. You drink scotch on the rocks, and Brian drinks vodka tonic. Neither of those drinks are milky white, and the stains on the table were milky white. I sniffed the handkerchief as I pulled it out of the trash can, and it didn't smell like alcohol. If that wasn't enough, neither whiskey nor vodka leaves a crust when it dries. I have a handkerchief in my coat pocket, and I checked it again this morning, and it's all crusty. The second part of the lie is that you threw it away because you didn't want to put a wet rag in your purse. When you left that room, you didn't have your purse with you. You didn't have anything in your hands when you left that room. And I know that because I saw you button your blouse with both hands. And the last thing you did when we got home last night. It was really two things. What you did and what you didn't do. All you did was grab a pillow and move as far away from me as you could. What you didn't do was the flip side of the same coin. I got up and left the room. For the next couple days, we avoided each other. All the while, I was puzzling over what to do next. It was complicated by the fact that I had loved Nan since the day I first saw her. Until that stupid Christmas party, I thought she loved me as much as I loved her and that we had a great marriage. How could I just walk away from that after 15 years? I was between a hammer and anvil. I couldn't bear the thought of not being able to be with her, and I couldn't be around her. It was in this mood that I went to a divorce lawyer. He was very forthright about the matter. I had no proof, so any divorce would be a case of he said, she said, and I would lose. I made more money than she did, so I would end up having to pay alimony. Everything we had, we split in half, and I would end up having to pay both attorneys and court costs out of my half. Even if I had proof that Nan was cheating, the situation wouldn't have changed much. I could waive the child support and her attorney fees, but everything else would be pretty much the same. He advised me to work on repairing the marriage. If I couldn't do that, I should hire a private investigator to try to gather all the information on her and then go back and meet with him. I was sitting in the living room staring at nothing, sipping my beer and thinking about what the lawyer had told me when Nan came home from work. She came into the room, sat down, just stared at me for a couple minutes and then said, "Rob, you can't go on like this. I know what you're thinking and you're wrong, but there's no way I can prove it to you. I could bring people from work to tell you that I don't spend my lunch hours in Brian's office, but you wouldn't believe them because they're my friends. I could bring Brian to you and he would tell you that nothing happened between us, but you wouldn't believe him either. I love you, Rob, and I don't want our marriage to fail. I need you to come to my side." What the hell does that mean? I'm quitting my job today. I can't work for Brian while you're thinking what I'm thinking. My marriage means more to me than this job. I need you to put your thoughts behind you, and I need you to mentally forgive me, even if I haven't done anything I deserve forgiveness for. Just say to yourself, "Okay, she messed up, but she loves me and I forgive her." I do love you, Rob. I really do, and I don't want our marriage to fall apart. Well, I did love her, and so I forgave her, but I could never forget. We made up and went on with our lives, but after that, things were never the same again. 2 years passed, and Nan received an invitation to a reunion. I didn't really want to go, but she insisted until I finally gave in and agreed. The drive took 5 hours, and by the time the trip was over, I made myself believe I would have a normal time. My class was 2 years older than Nan's, but I knew a few people there. The first person I saw as I entered the hotel ballroom was Michelle, Nan's classmate and my longtime friend. I guess I really should have said special, my longtime friend. She was wearing a black cocktail dress just above her knees in length. She looked simply stunning in her black high-heeled shoes. She was surrounded by a crowd of ex-athletes who looked like they had completely disbanded. Back in the day, I thought we were in eternal love, but 2 months later, she dumped me for a college boyfriend who later dumped her. She tried to come back to me, but I basically turned her down. 6 months later, I left for college and haven't seen her since. I wondered if she would recognize me and what she might do if she did. I remembered the day I had shooed her away and the slap I had gotten from her. I did know some of the other people at the reunion, but none of them I was familiar enough with to sit down and chat. So I followed Nan's example and sat where she sat and moved away when she did. I was doing my usual thing, sitting, sipping my drink, and taking pictures, while Nan was doing her usual thing, drinking more than she should have and staying on the dance floor. There was a steady stream of ex-boyfriends stretching to our table, asking her to dance. I noticed that before I showed up, she danced more often and had gotten a little closer to Bill Moser, her boyfriend. I had learned my lesson from the Christmas party and kept a close eye on Nan when we went to parties. I noticed Nan and Bill walking out the door together, and after a couple minutes I got up and followed them. I didn't see them anywhere, so I was going to go looking for them, but nature called me first. I went to the bathroom, and when I came out, I walked down the hallway, checking doorknobs and putting my ear to the ones that were locked. As I approached the locker room, I heard giggling. I quietly walked over, peeked out from behind the doorway, and saw Nan kneeling with her head reaching for Bill. I very quietly pulled away, hurried back to our table, grabbed my camera, and headed back to the locker room. As I was leaving the ballroom, Michelle intercepted me. "Do you have any idea where your wife and my husband have disappeared to?" "Bill is your husband?" "Unfortunately, yes." "Then take off your shoes and follow me. You need to be very quiet." She kicked off her heeled shoes, and we headed silently to the dressing room. I looked out from behind the door jamb and saw that Nan was still with Bill. I quickly stepped to my right and started taking pictures. When the flash turned on, Bill yelled, "What the hell?" Nan screamed, and I just continued to immortalize the event for posterity. To buy time, I had all the pictures I wanted. Nan was crying, and Michelle was calling Bill every nasty word she could think of. I turned to leave, but Michelle called out to me, "Wait, Rob!" I turned around and saw her putting her heeled shoes back on and heading towards me. "What are you gonna do?" "Walk away from this sorry ass." "Can I get copies of these pictures?" "As many as you want." "What are you gonna do right now?" "Go back to the hotel, get my stuff, and leave." "What about Nan?" "She can hitchhike or walk." "I don't care." Bill and I take turns driving. This evening, he's drinking and I'm driving. "You want to grab a cup of coffee someplace?" "Pick a place." "Denny's on 6th and Wilmont?" I said, "It'll be at least half an hour before I can get there. I gotta get out of the hotel before that cheating bitch catches up with me. I don't want to look at her anymore." "I'll meet you there in 30 minutes. I walked into the hotel, grabbed my bags, and stopped at the front desk to check out. The man behind the counter said there was a message for me and handed it to me. It was from Nan asking me not to do anything rash and to wait for her. I told him that my wife would still be staying until the hour of reckoning, paid the bill, and left. Michelle was sitting at a table when I approached Denny's, and I joined her. We sat and drank coffee and chatted for a while, and then she said, "I never forgot you. I never forgave you for the way you talked to me when I tried to crawl back to you. Not that I didn't deserve it, but you could have been a little gentler." What can I say? I was young. The love of my life had just dumped me for some dumbass college kid, and I was filled with anger. If it had been a couple more months, I probably would have forgotten about it. The love of your life? You'll never know how depressed I was. Now that we're talking about love, what are you going to do next? Home to close accounts, cancel credit cards, and see a lawyer. Aren't you going to socialize with her? Been there, done that, and it didn't help. Remember the old saying, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me"? Yeah. Well, that was the second time, at least the second time that I know of. What about you? We live in an apartment that belonged to him before we were married, so I'm moving out. I'll try to beat him to the bank in the morning and get to the safety deposit box. While I was waiting for you, I transferred all the money from our joint accounts electronically to the account I had before we got married. You're not going to talk to him either, are you? This is my third husband, Rob, and he knows that my first two husbands are in the past because I caught them cheating on me. He knew going into our marriage that I wouldn't give him any leeway in that area. How much stuff do you have? Will it all fit in one car? I could load it all in my car and yours. Then let's do it. We finished our coffee, drove to her house, and hauled everything she wanted out in 2 hours. What now? I asked. Find a room. Wake me up with a call at 7 so I can be at the bank when it opens. What if he beats you there? He won't. He'll go to the apartment and go to bed. I doubt he'll even notice I'm gone until he wakes up around 10. What about you? I'll go home and start getting ready. Do you have to leave right now? I can't leave until we find a place for your stuff, unless you want to leave it in the cars and move to Colorado Springs. There's nothing keeping me here. I think I could get a job in Colorado Springs. Damn it! Why not? How's your revenge thing going? What do you mean? I need a place to sleep till morning anyway. I really don't want to be alone tonight. You could stay with me and we could get even sometime. I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind at all. We checked into the Days Inn and asked for a wake-up call at 7, which, as it turned out, we never needed. We stayed up all night long. No sooner had the door closed behind us than Michelle started to undress. I followed her example and she giggled and said, "We're a little impatient, aren't we? Come on, honey. The former love of your life is going to show you what you've been missing all these years by not taking me back when you could have." I leaned over and kissed her on the lips and then broke the kiss and said, Michelle was standing at the entrance to the bank when it opened, and 20 minutes later she was on her way to Colorado Springs to pick me up in my car. My cell phone rang every 15 minutes and I could see from the caller ID that it was Nan, so I ignored the calls. 30 minutes away from the Springs, I called a locksmith on his cell phone and arranged for him to meet me at home, before leaving the motel where Michelle and I were staying. I asked her what kind of job she was looking for, and she said she was a legal secretary. After making arrangements with the locksmith, I called our company's lawyer and asked him if he knew anyone who needed an experienced legal secretary. That's an odd thing to ask. Not 5 minutes later, Betty gave me 2 weeks' notice. She's leaving to get married, and she and her new husband are moving to Florida. Why do you ask? I have a friend who is moving to Springs, and she's looking for a job. Ask her to call me. Are you too busy to talk right now? No. Stay by the phone. I disconnected and called Michelle's cell phone and gave her Ben's number and told her to call him as soon as possible. When we got to the house, the locksmith was already waiting for us, and within an hour, all the locks were changed. Michelle told me that she had an appointment with Ben for 3 in the afternoon. We found a storage unit, rented a space, and unloaded both cars. The next step is to find a couple apartments, I said. Why 2? Last night seemed to indicate that we were a good match. Why not share an apartment? Maybe after the divorce, but until I get that sorted out, I don't want to give Nan anything she could use against me. We can get a motel room until you figure out if Ben will hire you, and then we can look for an apartment. If you're going to live in an apartment, why did you change the locks on your house? To keep Nan out. I don't want her going through the place. We'll split it in half, but I intend to have a big say in what she gets as part of her 50%. We got Michelle a motel room, left her car there, and I drove her to Ben's office. I introduced them to each other, told her I'd be back for her later, and left to go about my business. I went to the bank, closed all the accounts and opened new ones in my name only, and then cleaned out the safety deposit box that Nan and I had access to and moved everything into a box in my name. I swung by my office and used the office phone to cancel all the joint credit cards, then headed back to Ben's office. When I arrived, Ben was taking her around the office and showing her where everything was, and I asked, "Is this a good sign?" I hired her and she starts work in a week. I wanted to invite her next week, but she says she needs time to find an apartment and move. I drove her back to the motel, dropped her off, and told her I'd be back at 7 to take her out to dinner. My cell phone wouldn't stop ringing and Nan kept trying to reach me, so I finally took her call. "Where are you?" "I'm home." "Why did you run away and leave me?" "That's a stupid question, Nan, considering what you were doing in that locker room." How do you expect me to get home? Walk, hitchhike, take the bus, get Bill to give you a ride. I don't care. When you get there, you'll have to call me so I can come and let you in. Why would I need to do that? Because I changed all the locks to keep you out. I don't want you in that house when I'm not there. I don't believe you won't try to clean the house. We'll let the courts decide who gets what we can't agree on. The courts? What do the courts have to do with this? That's what ends up happening when people get divorced. Divorce? Why are you talking about divorce? It's not necessary, honey. Okay, I drank too much and let myself get dragged into something I shouldn't have. But I love you, Rob. You know I do. We'll be fine. There's no need for a divorce. I'm sorry, Nan. I was weak and let you get away with what you did to Brian. It won't happen twice. Call me on my cell phone when you get back in town, and I'll arrange to meet you at my house. Bye. Wait, Rob, please. And I hung up. I picked Michelle up at 7 and we went to dinner. After dinner, Michelle said, I'm in the mood for some more revenge. How about you? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I can do it. Damn, girl, you're making a tough deal. Count me in. I managed to get us to the motel without crashing the car, and then it was a busy night. We undressed, sat on the bed, hugged and kissed. What now? She asked. How about we take a shower, try the 69 and see where it gets us? I really like the way you think, she said as she got out of bed, took my hand and led me into the shower. The next morning, I met with the divorce lawyer and gave him the pictures I had taken of Nan in the locker room with Bill. And after that, everything went on as normal. Nan came back to town, and I met her at home. She did everything she could to talk me out of the divorce, said she loved me and only me, and that Bill was just a drunken prank. I told her I wasn't buying it, that I was meeting with a lawyer, and that she would be served with papers any day now. Then we went through the house arguing about who got what, and once we got everything settled, I grabbed my bag and took out what I wanted. Then I gave the keys to Nan's house and left. Michelle and I had a fun 2 weeks before I told her that I wouldn't be able to see her again until the divorce was finalized. She wasn't happy about it, but understood why it had to be that way. It's a good thing I made that decision, because I later learned that Nan had hired a private investigator to follow me around and try to find out anything about me that she could use to disprove the pictures I had of her and Bill. Once the divorce was finalized, I expected Michelle and I to have a relationship, but it was not to be. The divorce took almost 7 months, and while I was busy trying to stay away from her, Michelle met another man and started a relationship with him. It worked out pretty much as promised by the lawyer I met with after the mess between Nan and Brian. Everything was divided equally, but due to the circumstances, I didn't have to pay Nan alimony and her attorney fees, but I did have to pay court costs. It annoyed me that she would get half of my pension, but the upside was that she wouldn't get a dime of it until I retired, and I had another 20 years before that happened. A lot can happen in 20 years. Hopefully I'll wake up one morning and hear that she was hit by a bus or hit by a drunk driver. A guy can only hope. The end.